The air inside David and Vanessa's sprawling, newly built mansion in Alpharetta, Georgia, was less about Christmas cheer and more about meticulously calculated opulence. It was a space designed not for living, but for impressing. Every surface reflected the blinding white light of 1,000 tiny LEDs, making the 100-foot-tall, professionally decorated Christmas tree look less like a symbol of warmth and more like a carefully priced monument to wealth. Eleanor, whom everyone simply called Granny, felt painfully out of place from the moment she stepped through the massive mahogany front doors. She wore her favorite, slightly threadbare velvet dress, a deep burgundy that was comfortable and felt festive, but next to Vanessa's guests, all draped in designer velvet and silk, she felt like a forgotten piece of furniture. She quickly tucked her small, leather clutch bag closer to her side, where a worn manila envelope containing a decades-old secret lay pressed against her ribs. Eleanor was here for one reason, her granddaughter, Lily. Lily, with her bright, genuine smile and eyes that reminded Eleanor so much of her own late mother, was the only light in this annual spectacle of status climbing. David, her son, was mostly kind, but over the last 10 years, he had been molded by Vanessa's ambition, becoming a handsome, hollow echo of the sweet boy she had raised on her own. She found David near the colossal fireplace, awkwardly trying to network with a group of impeccably dressed executives. He offered her a quick, embarrassed hug. "Mom, you made it." "Great. Look, Ms. Albright is here tonight, Vanessa's CEO. I need to, just try to blend in, okay?" He didn't wait for her answer before disappearing back into the crowd, leaving Eleanor standing alone, her feelings already bruised. Eleanor clutched the gift she had brought, a beautifully hand-knitted, pale lavender cardigan for Lily. She had chosen the finest wool she could afford and spent countless evenings perfecting the cable knit. It was a gift born of love, not money. When she finally located Lily, the girl accepted it with genuine delight, but the moment was instantly ruined by the arrival of Vanessa. Vanessa swept into the room, a magnificent vision in a glittering silver gown, followed by her entourage of socialite friends. She spotted the sweater Lily was already trying to pull over her head and her smile vanished. "Lily, darling, what in heaven's name is that?" Vanessa's voice was sharp, yet she maintained a saccharine tone that somehow made the insult sting more. She took the cardigan from Lily's hands as if it were contaminated. "Oh, Eleanor. It's quaint. We only wear cashmere and designer blends here, dear. This scratchy wool is hardly appropriate for our Christmas photos. It looks cheap, honestly." She tossed the lovingly crafted item onto a side table piled with expensive, professionally wrapped packages, dismissing months of Eleanor's effort with a single, careless gesture. "It's hand-knitted, Vanessa," Eleanor said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's wool. It's warm." "Wool is for shepherds, Eleanor, not the C-suite adjacent," Vanessa chuckled, drawing a laugh from her friends. "We'll donate it. Now, Lily, go show your Aunt Martha the Cartier bracelet your father bought you." The rest of the afternoon was a slow, agonizing process of death by 1,000 microaggressions. Vanessa kept Eleanor segregated to the kitchen island, giving her small, demeaning tasks like overseeing the canapes or ensuring the ice buckets were full, tasks usually reserved for the hired catering staff. Eleanor endured it all for Lily, watching her granddaughter from across the room. But the emotional pressure was mounting. She overheard snippets of conversation designed to undermine her. Vanessa says David's ambition was held back by her early family situation. It took Vanessa's drive to fix him. Yes, I hear Eleanor was just a simple school librarian. Not much of a financial role model, poor dear. David, whenever he passed, would give Eleanor a quick, pleading glance, a silent message to keep the peace and not cause a scene that might jeopardize his standing with his in-laws or, God forbid, Ms. Albright. His inaction hurt more than Vanessa's barbs. He was choosing his wife's approval over his mother's dignity. As the evening wore on, the champagne flowed freely, and Vanessa grew louder, her mask of sophistication beginning to slip. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the public confirmation of her superiority. She had cornered Ms. Albright, her formidable CEO, near the grand piano, and was holding court, giving a drunken, dramatic speech about her life's achievements. And truly, Ms. Albright, the greatest hurdle I overcame was David's background, Vanessa announced, her voice ringing out clearly in the brief lull of the jazz band. I tell him all the time, I brought you up. Your mother, Eleanor, here, she raised you in poverty, on a simple school librarian's salary, a one-parent home. She gave you nothing but debt, really. She staggered slightly, then pointed a perfectly manicured finger at Eleanor, who was now standing by the archway, her heart pounding in her chest. Eleanor, Vanessa slurred, her eyes blazing with cruel self-satisfaction. Be honest with everyone, you failed my husband. You were a poor, single mother who never gave him opportunities. You're barely his real mother. The music stopped. The room held its breath. The silence was absolute, broken only by the delicate clinking of a crystal glass falling from one of Vanessa's friend's hands. The phrase, barely his real mother, was a low blow. It struck at the deepest, most carefully guarded secret Eleanor had protected for decades. She looked at David, hoping, begging him to finally stand up. His eyes were glued to the floor, his cheeks crimson with shame, but he remained silent, complicit in the humiliation. Eleanor took a slow, deep breath. The years of quiet sacrifice, the double shifts she worked, the scholarships she fought for him to get, all of it dismissed as debt and failure. Her dignity was gone. But as she looked from the snickering faces of Vanessa's friends to the pale, controlled face of Ms. Albright, she felt a profound shift. The silent war was over. She reached down, her fingers closing tightly around the manila envelope tucked into her small purse. She had kept that secret to protect David. Now, she would use it to protect herself. Vanessa's arrogance had given Eleanor no choice but to unleash the truth, no matter the cost. The silent weapon. The silence in David's living room was heavier than the crystal chandelier hanging overhead. Vanessa, having delivered her poisonous truth, stood swaying slightly, flushed with the certainty of victory. David remained rooted to the spot, his silence a profound abandonment. Eleanor, however, felt a strange, cold calm descend upon her. The pain was still there, a deep, lacerating ache, but it was now channeled into a powerful, dignified resolve. She pushed off the marble archway, her quiet movement drawing all eyes away from the triumphant Vanessa. Eleanor walked deliberately, her gaze fixed not on her son or her daughter-in-law, but on Ms. Albright. The CEO, usually the epitome of corporate detachment, was watching Eleanor with a flicker of something unreadable, perhaps pity, perhaps annoyance at the scene, but definitely attention. You've all heard Vanessa's statement, Eleanor began, her voice low and steady, a stark contrast to Vanessa's drunken shriek. It was the voice of the school librarian she used when addressing a disruptive classroom, gentle, but firm, carrying absolute authority. She claims that I failed David, that I raised him in poverty, and that I am barely his mother. Vanessa scoffed, taking a belligerent step forward. It's true, you old hag. Admit your failure. Eleanor didn't flinch. She simply met Vanessa's gaze. I accept part of your statement, Vanessa. You are right. I am not David's biological mother. The room erupted in a flurry of whispers. David's head snapped up, finally looking at his mother, his expression a chaotic mix of shock and betrayal. This was a truth he knew, but it was their secret, one Eleanor had guarded fiercely for 40 years, and one David had promised, terrified, to keep from his status-obsessed wife. Mom, no. Stop it. David stammered, finally breaking his silence, but too late to help. Yes, David, it's time, Eleanor said gently, offering him a sad, resolute look. She reached into her purse and retrieved the manila envelope. The paper was thin and crisp, slightly yellowed at the edges. She pulled out the document, the original decree of finalization for adoption. She held the document aloft, allowing the nearby guests to glimpse the official seal. When David was 3 weeks old, I was granted the immense privilege of adopting him. I was legally and fiercely recognized as his mother. And I raised him, not with wealth, but with love, sacrifice, and every penny of a school librarian's salary. Vanessa, momentarily stunned by the confirmation of the adoption, quickly tried to seize the narrative. Her face split into a cruel, knowing grin. See? I knew it. He's not even hers. David, your mother is a liar, a pauper, and a fraud. She's waving an old piece of paper to try and squeeze money out of us now that she's desperate. She turned to Ms. Albright, pleading for validation. Ms. Albright, this is harassment, ma'am. She's trying to disrupt my professional life. Eleanor ignored Vanessa entirely. Her target was the CEO. She walked directly to Ms. Albright, ignoring the gasps and frantic whispers, and placed the document directly into the older woman's hands. Ms. Albright, Eleanor said, meeting the CEO's severe eyes. You are the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar firm. You know the difference between a cheap trick and legal truth. I am giving you this document for one reason, to prove that my sacrifice was real, and my love for my son was absolute. I ask you, as a successful woman, to read the name of the biological mother listed here. Read it, and tell me if I was a failed mother for giving my child a better life than I could offer him then. Ms. Albright, clearly caught off guard, initially treated the paper with disdain, as if it were a meaningless petition. But as her eyes scanned the top line, the names of the child and the adoptive parent, she grew tense. She was accustomed to dealing with high-stakes contracts, and she recognized the solemn weight of this legal form. She flipped the page to the section detailing the biological parents, her brow furrowing in concentration. David, pale and shaky, now found his voice. Mom, don't. Don't involve strangers. Vanessa, stop. But he was too late. The secret was out, and the gears of fate were already turning. As Ms. Albright's eyes settled on the name listed under biological mother, her entire demeanor shattered. The icy, corporate mask dissolved, replaced by a look of sheer, physical agony. The document fluttered in her grasp. She tried to speak, but only a dry, rattling sound emerged from her throat. The CEO, the most powerful and feared woman in the room, suddenly seemed frail. Her gaze snapped from the paper to David's face, his handsome features, his eyes, searching for a connection she had never known existed. Vanessa, still thinking this was a simple confirmation of Eleanor's low status, grinned smugly. See, Ms. Albright? It's just old paperwork, proving she's a nobody. Ms. Albright did not hear her. Her gaze was locked on David, and then she looked at Eleanor with a dawning horror that froze everyone in place. She dropped the papers, her breath catching in a silent scream. No, Ms. Albright whispered, her voice cracking, barely audible over the sudden quiet. This can't be. She placed a hand on her chest, right over her heart, staring at the adoption certificate lying on the floor. It was in that agonizing moment that everyone in the room realized this wasn't just about Eleanor's past. It was about their present, and the secret connecting the powerful CEO and the shamed grandmother was about to detonate. The sound of shattering crystal was a muted echo against the profound, terrifying silence that gripped the living room. Ms. Albright, the CEO, knelt on the polished marble, the adoption papers clutched in her hand like a sacred, painful relic. The ice in the untouched champagne buckets was melting, but the air was colder than ever. David finally stumbled toward her, his face a mask of profound confusion. Ms. Albright? What is it? What are you reading? Ms. Albright slowly lifted her gaze, tears streaming freely down her face, a display of raw, uncontrolled emotion that no one in the corporate world had ever seen from her. She looked from the name listed on the document to David's worried, handsome face, and then she let out a wrenching sob. David, she whispered, her voice unrecognizable, ragged with decades of buried guilt. It's me. I never knew. I never knew where they placed you. Vanessa, whose entire world was constructed on status and professional ambition, was the first to fully comprehend the meaning. Her eyes widened, a look of abject horror washing over her features. She realized that the woman she had just championed, the woman whose approval she lived and breathed for, was the woman Eleanor had just exposed as her husband's biological mother. No. No, no, no. Vanessa shrieked, sprinting forward and tearing the document from Ms. Albright's grasp. She frantically scanned the page, searching for a clerical error, a forgery, anything that would disprove the connection. But the names were undeniable, the seal official. The woman she had just begged for validation, the woman who held her entire career in her hand, was now inextricably linked to the pauper she had just publicly shamed. David stood paralyzed, swaying slightly, feeling the tectonic plates of his entire existence shift. He had always known he was adopted, but Eleanor had protected him from the identity of his birth parents. To find out that his biological mother was the woman his wife worshipped, the CEO who embodied the wealth and power Vanessa demanded, was a dizzying shock. He looked at Ms. Albright, seeing his own eyes reflected in her tear-filled gaze, and then at Eleanor, who stood silently, observing the chaos she had wrought. Eleanor stepped forward, finally taking control of the devastating narrative. She looked at Ms. Albright with a look that was not one of malice, but of shared, deep sorrow. When you were 20, Ms. Albright, you made a difficult choice to protect your burgeoning career and gave up a child you clearly loved, Eleanor stated, addressing the CEO directly. I was the school librarian who adopted him. I may not have been able to give him corporate connections or inherited wealth, but I gave him a stable home, endless love, and the knowledge that he was wanted. I fulfilled the promise of that adoption decree. She turned her attention, now, to Vanessa. You, Vanessa, accused me of being a failed mother because I was poor. You used my struggles as a weapon to elevate your own standing. You shamed a woman who sacrificed everything for the man you claimed to love. You did this in front of your peers and, ironically, in front of the one woman whose opinion you value above all else. Vanessa's facade completely crumbled. She was weeping hysterically, the silver gown suddenly looking grotesque. She rushed Ms. Albright, grabbing her arm. Ma'am, please. This is a stunt. She's doing this to ruin me. You can't believe her. I'm your best analyst. I need this job. I need David. Ms. Albright gently but firmly pulled her arm away from Vanessa. The motherly tears were replaced by the cold, definitive expression of a CEO making a high-stakes decision. Vanessa, you are correct. You are a talented analyst, Ms. Albright said, her voice now ringing with corporate finality. But my company values integrity and humanity. You have publicly, and cruelly, humiliated a woman who gave my biological son a life of love. Furthermore, you did this knowing that Eleanor's son, my David, had a difficult start, and you weaponized that against the very person who stepped in to save him. She took out her phone, her fingers moving swiftly across the screen. David and the other guests watched in horror as the CEO sent a message, not a text, but a corporate directive. Consider this my final decision, Vanessa, Ms. Albright announced, her eyes never leaving her disgraced protégé. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately, for gross misconduct and violation of our ethical policies. Your access codes will be revoked within 60 seconds. Vanessa stared at the floor, clutching her chest, a desperate wail escaping her lips as her professional life vaporized. She was suddenly stripped of the only identity she cared about. She looked at David, but the connection was gone. He was already walking toward Eleanor and Ms. Albright. Mom, both of you, David whispered, taking a hand from each of them. He was confused, heartbroken, but something had fundamentally shifted. The shame he felt was no longer about his mother's lack of wealth, but about his own failure to defend her. Eleanor, watching her son finally choose love over status, felt the decades of pain begin to ease. The revenge was complete, but more importantly, the truth had set her son free. She looked at Ms. Albright, her co-mother, and saw the possibility of not just peace, but a new, beautifully complex family future. The instantaneous destruction of Vanessa's professional life was the catalyst that finally cleared the suffocating air in the Alpharetta mansion. As Ms. Albright's voice died away, declaring Vanessa terminated, the guests, a group of executives and social climbers, did what such people always do, they quietly, quickly, and professionally vanished. Within minutes, the vast, opulent living room was empty, save for the three adults caught in the whirlwind of the truth, and Vanessa, who was now huddled on the floor, weeping silent, defeated tears of rage and disbelief. David walked over to his wife one last time, his voice devoid of the anger and terror that had possessed him earlier, replaced by a deep, weary finality. "It's over, Vanessa. You chose wealth and cruelty over everything else. Please leave. Now." He didn't wait for a response, there was nothing left to say. He turned his back on the wreck of his marriage and walked towards the two women who defined his past, his present, and now, his future. Eleanor and Ms. Albright stood near the grand piano, the discarded knitted cardigan still lying innocently on the side table. The silence between them was not tense, but deeply respectful, a silence reserved for those who have shared a monumental, life-altering experience. "Eleanor," Ms. Albright began, her corporate veneer completely gone, leaving only the vulnerable woman underneath. "I don't know what to say. I am responsible for the shame I carried, and yet you, a stranger, took that shame and turned it into fierce, protective love for my son. I apologize for what you suffered today, and for the years you felt you had to keep this secret." Eleanor reached out, gently touching Ms. Albright's arm. "You gave him up to protect yourself and your future, dear. I understand that. My late husband and I could offer him the stability that was missing. It was a choice made with love, by both of us, decades apart. There is nothing to forgive between us. You see, when a mother sacrifices, she doesn't do it for recognition. She does it for the child's survival. That's what we both did." David watched this exchange, suddenly understanding the profound, complex narrative of his life that had been hidden from him. He realized that the adoption papers were not a mark of deficiency, but a testament to two powerful acts of love, one mother's sacrifice of giving him away, and the other's heroic choice to take him in. He moved to Eleanor, kneeling before her, looking into her tired but resolute eyes. "Mom," he whispered, the single syllable carrying more meaning than any apology could. "I am so sorry. For not defending you. For letting Vanessa make me feel ashamed of how you raised me. I bought into the lie that love and sacrifice weren't enough. I let her make me feel poor because I wasn't born into this." He gestured vaguely at the empty, echoing room. "But I was raised by a queen, and I traded her dignity for a gilded cage." Eleanor pulled him into a fierce, much-needed embrace. "Oh, my darling David. You are free now. That's all that matters. You were never poor. You are rich in spirit, and Vanessa's cruelty cannot touch that." Ms. Albright, seeing the pure, unconditional love between them, backed away slightly, giving them space. She was witnessing the consequence of her early decision, yet it was a consequence filled with grace. "David," Ms. Albright said, approaching him hesitantly after his moment with Eleanor. "I know I can't replace 40 years of holidays and scraped knees and school plays. But I want to be part of your life now, if you'll let me. Not as your boss's boss, but as your birth mother. And I promise to respect Eleanor's place, always." David looked at both women, a small, genuine smile finally breaking through his distress. "I'm an adult who just got two mothers on Christmas. It's the best present ever. But we start slow. And the first thing we do is figure out how to explain this mess to Lily." The mention of Lily immediately unified them. The shared bond of the grandchild became the new family foundation. They sat together on the floor, far away from the shattered glass and the professional wreckage, and began to talk, not about business or social standing, but about Lily's school, her passions, and the qualities she inherited from both sides of her incredibly complex lineage. As the sun began to set, casting long, peaceful shadows across the room, Eleanor pointed to the neglected, knitted cardigan. "That sweater is warm. It was made with love. That's the kind of Christmas we need now." Ms. Albright nodded, pulling out her own cashmere wrap, and draped it gently over Eleanor's shoulders. "It seems," the CEO said, a genuine warmth in her voice, "that we all have a great deal to learn from a simple librarian." The night ended not with celebration, but with a quiet, heartfelt promise to each other. They had cleared the debris of lies and betrayal. A new, beautifully complicated family, rooted in truth and shared motherhood, was finally ready to grow. The cage had broken, and they were all finally, truly home. The grand, sterile mansion felt utterly hollowed out as the new, true family retreated from the dining room. David, Eleanor, and Ms. Albright spent the last 2 hours of Christmas evening in the small, rarely used sunroom, a corner of the house that felt marginally more genuine than the rest. The conversation was not about business or betrayal, but about the small, foundational details of David's life, his favorite childhood blanket, the time he broke his arm trying to climb the neighbor's tree, the sheer determination Eleanor showed securing him a scholarship. Meanwhile, Vanessa's exit was swift and silent. Driven by a furious, cold panic rather than sorrow, she had arranged for a car to collect her, disappearing into the cold night with only her most expensive jewelry and her bitter, ruined pride. The epilogue of arrogance. The divorce proceedings were finalized quickly and without fanfare, a testament to Ms. Albright's influence and David's clarity. Because Vanessa's job loss was a direct result of her proven misconduct, the public abuse was documented by the CEO herself. She was denied any golden parachute and found herself professionally ostracized. The market Vanessa had dominated was small and tight-knit, and Ms. Albright's word was law. Vanessa had traded her dignity for a title, and in the end, she lost both. David, free from the crushing pressure of maintaining Vanessa's social status, sold the Alpharetta mansion. It was a beautiful cage, but it felt tainted. He bought a warm, charming craftsman home closer to the city, which still offered plenty of room for Lily and, crucially, a guest wing where Eleanor could stay indefinitely. The new family foundation. The true victory was the creation of their beautifully complex, blended family. Ms. Albright, whose given name was Diana, embraced her role not as a competitor to Eleanor, but as a co-mother. Diana was a woman of fierce efficiency, and she applied that same focus to motherhood. She never tried to erase Eleanor's history, instead, she honored it. When she learned Eleanor had given up travel and hobbies to put David through school, Diana booked them a trip to the Italian countryside, just the two mothers. "We deserve this, Eleanor." A chance to finally breathe, far from the C-suite and the kitchen duties, she had insisted. Eleanor discovered that behind the CEO's severe exterior was a woman capable of great remorse and deep, if sometimes awkward, affection. She was genuinely interested in the small details of David's life and never once tried to assert financial superiority over Eleanor. She treated Eleanor with the respect due to the woman who had completed her life. The shared love for Lily was the strongest glue. Lily, who had initially been confused, thrived under the attention of her two grandmothers. She loved hearing Eleanor's simple, loving stories of David's childhood and listening to Diana's ambitious, encouraging stories about working hard to build an empire. The greatest gift David received was watching Eleanor reclaim her true value. She was no longer the poor, quaint woman, she was the matriarch, the pillar of unconditional love, and the only person in the world who could genuinely talk back to a CEO. The quiet triumph. The following Christmas was spent not in a sterile mansion, but in David's new, cozy home, filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon. The grand piano was gone, replaced by a comfortable, oversized sofa. The food was simple and abundant, prepared collaboratively by Eleanor and Diana. When Lily opened her gift from Eleanor, a gorgeous, soft blanket knitted from locally sourced, luxurious merino wool, Vanessa's absence was the true gift. The cruelty, the judgment, the shaming, it had all dissolved into the past. Eleanor sat watching David and Diana talk easily over the fireplace, occasionally joining in to tease David about his childhood fashion choices. She realized that her revenge hadn't been about financial destruction or social status. Her true triumph was forcing the truth to the surface, which resulted in the rescue of her son's soul. She had won back David's respect and given him a complete, honest history. She had traded the anguish of a secret for the fullness of a new, complex family. Her final reflection was one of peace. Sometimes, the greatest power an ordinary woman holds is the simple, honest truth. And sometimes, the most magnificent Christmas surprise is the family you never knew you had. A message from Grandma Eleanor. Thank you, dear ones, for letting me share this deep and personal story with you. This tale proves that strength is found not in silence, but in speaking your truth. If this story of finding peace after betrayal touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video. It helps us reach other grandmas who need to hear a message of hope. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. Your support keeps these real-life dramas and triumphs coming. Tell me in the comments below, what is the most unexpected act of kindness you've ever witnessed on Christmas Day? Until next time, stay courageous, trust your instincts, and cherish the ones who truly cherish you.